Welcome to A Window on SAHMRI, where we take you inside South Australia's independent not-for-profit health and medical research institute. Each episode, we get to know the people driving our life-changing research, getting into what motivates them personally and how their work is delivering a brighter, healthier future for all.
Cade, you spent years as a special ops intelligence officer in the U.S. Air Force. Can you give us some insight into what that involved?
I did my intelligence training at a Goodfellow Air Force Base in Texas. And then from there, I went to AFSOC, Air Force Special Operations Command. So I was part of the 11 Special Operations Intelligence Squadron. And so we run intel for Tier 1 forces, North Africa, and throughout the Middle East, like Afghanistan, Iraq, Syria, and Yemen. And so like it kind of ranged from like straight counterterrorism to hostage rescue. Also got to do a little bit like some interesting operations, but also like the pullout from Afghanistan that we did in like 2021. So I did that, and then as I transitioned to like my last 6 months in the military, I did like counter Russia stuff. So it was like right before Russia invaded Ukraine.
So would you be deployed?
Stateside. So because of like collection, like the teams are downrange, and it works out well because if it's daytime in the States, it's nighttime in the other side of the world. And that's when the teams mostly operate. So it kind of works well. We do a lot of the intelligence analysis from like human intelligence, like spy stuff, aircraft like drones, or signals intelligence, which can't really talk about.
Pretty exciting and intense stuff.
Yeah. I guess like that's one of the more interesting things, I guess, because it's like you get into intel partially because like you enjoy the strategy side, but when you're like a younger officer, you're more tactically focused, and so the decisions you make can affect like somebody's life downrange, whether it's an innocent or like your own troops who are like going into battle. So I enjoyed it. It was fast paced and fun.
What was the most memorable moment from your career?
I'd say like one of them was, so I was with Joint Special Operations Command, which is based in Fort Bragg, North Carolina. And that's when we did the Afghanistan pullout. It's probably the most surreal because everything is kind of going wrong, as anyone could have seen on like the news, like people falling off of planes, Americans or even refugees getting like accosted or like beat up outside of the gates. Obviously, like the bomb that went off and killed Americans, or like those like 18 Americans that got killed.
I remember that footage of everyone running and trying to grab onto the planes.
Yeah, and it's like one of the surreal things, like, so like terrorist organizations, they learn how we collect against them. And so like we knew that attack was coming, but you can only see so much. Like, we essentially had the call out that it was like imminent, like, it was like a day out, 10 hours out, 5 hours out, 2 hours, like it's in play, but then just there's no way to actually stop it. So it's one of those, like, everybody's frantically trying to figure it out, but you can't. And sometimes it was spot on, like we could actually stop something, but other times it's just too much happening. So it's surreal, but like, that's kind of what you live for, is that like that it's not, it sounds bad to say, but when your decisions mean something, it feels more alive.
That must have been an incredible life experience to go through. And what have you done, Inushi?
I mean, my life's not as exciting.
But you've been in science for nearly a decade already.
Wow.
I looked it up on LinkedIn. So.
Oh, did you?
Yeah. What got you into science?
Like a lot of people, I kind of just fell into it, right? Like I wasn't planning on doing research at all.
What were you planning on doing?
I don't know. I got
something else.
Yeah. So I think it was like, I was always kind of interested in med. So I kind of wanted to go down that path. But then with how I came to Australia, like my mum came to do a PhD here. So I was international, and to do med, like $70,000 a year, right? Very expensive. So I was like, oh, what should I do? I'm not really sure. So I had like med sci was still my top preference, but I had law, I had journalism, but I think I still liked the idea of neuroscience. So yeah, I was just like, why don't I just do this this degree, see what happens, and then maybe try for med later. So yeah, and then I think around my second year, I got a chance to actually do some research because I had no idea what research was. And my idea, and I tell this to a lot of people, was literally just sitting in a lab and culturing bacteria. I just thought of like agar plates and scratching them and just culturing bacteria. I was like, no, absolutely not. But so my research opportunity was actually kind of in doing stats and a little bit of coding. So I was like, oh, this is actually very interesting. It's like a whole side of research that I didn't know, right? And then that kind of still like led me on to being like, oh, maybe I should do honors. Maybe I should do a PhD.
Okay, so it's been a slow burn.
It's a slow burn.
Got more interesting as you've gone along.
Yeah. And then I stumbled across...
Not like Cade.
No.
That was not a slow burn.
No, but like I didn't have as dramatic as a shift in careers like Cade did.
As your mum doing a PhD, is that partly what inspired you?
I think so, but like hers, my parents are engineers, so hers is completely different. And she was doing her PhD in water engineering. So I watched her grow tomatoes and I was like, maybe not. But yeah, like I think eventually I kind of fell into that kind of space as well. So yeah.
How did you go from the military to Adelaide to doing what you do now? Because that's quite a jump.
Yeah, so it's called the ROTC Cadet Reserve Officer Training Schools when I was in college. So knew I wanted to go in the military, but my original plan was to actually go to medical school. And I had a scholarship. I just didn't get into the schools I wanted. And so the Air Force opened up the opportunity to go intelligence. So I'd like put that aside. And then when I was doing Intel, I got an email from the Air Force Institute of Technology, which is the Air Force's graduate school based in Ohio, Wright-Patterson Air Force Base. And it was like for data analytics. And I was like, could learn it. Like obviously Intel is a lot of data, so I could do better for my unit if I like learned more about coding, statistics, and those kinds of things, and realized I enjoyed it a lot. And then I would want to go back to graduate school. And so as I was getting out of the military, I had an internship with Microsoft, and I did that for 4 months. It's a program for like military who are leaving the service, get some job skills. And I did get an offer to go to Microsoft, but I stayed on the path of going to grad school. Did a year of grad school, and then I was realizing like maybe my lab isn't the right fit for what I was doing. I actually, ironically, wanted to move closer to home. I'm from Sacramento, California, and I was in Florida. And through a friend of a friend, I knew Professor Bardy, like my current boss. And so I just called to get some advice, career advice, like how should I continue? And he gave me the opportunity to come. Well, actually, he offered me remote to do some statistics and whatever. And I was like, if I'm going to learn, I should learn from him and get as close as I can. And so I just moved across the country and then across the world, I guess, to Adelaide.
Wow.
Been here for about a year and a half now.
That happened fast too.
Yeah. I left by the time like I talked to Cedric, I like quit my PhD within a month, and then within another month I was in Adelaide. So quick move.
And has it paid off?
Yeah, I think so. Like definitely learned a lot and more skills. Like the lab that I was in, I would say like they would want to do more like bioinformatics, but didn't have the focus, or it wasn't their main focus. So I'd be the one doing more of the exploring versus like having someone like actually like teach me like the right way to do it. And so now like with Cedric, I know how to code, but then I don't necessarily know the science side. So it's kind of like a jump start into bioinformatics and can probably spin out into industry, hopefully.
You strike me as the kind of person who does things properly or not at all.
Yeah. To me, it was like an inevitable thing. So it's like, if it was inevitable that my PhD wasn't going to work out the way I wanted, it's better to cut it and find the right experience than to drag it on for 5 years and not enjoy it or not get the right experience.
And you get to come to Australia, which is way better than America. So that's pretty cool. You might disagree. Inushi, what do you tell your friends and family that you do all day?
I've kind of transitioned now because I used to be like, oh, I do like GBM research, right? So kind of transitioned on from that now, but it's mostly like bioinformatics as well. but not the same bioinformatics as Cade. Like I can't do what he does, but more like genetics analysis as well. But before I used to be in the lab, like culturing the cells and doing drug experiments and stuff. Yeah.
And how does the work that you do intersect and overlap with each other within Cedric's lab?
Sure. So we overlap on a couple of projects. One is this project that's like trying to compare how do neurons in the brain compare to cells that we grow in a dish, like induced pluripotent stem cells. Like we know that the human brain is like very diverse, but how much of that can we actually recapitulate from like a simplified cell model? And so one way you do that is you inject current into a neuron, and then it responds with an action potential. So you so my job would be to like find ways to measure the amplitude of the waveform, and then like how did those like group into like different distinct neuron types. And then Inushi works on the like genetic side, because like after we patch this, it's called patch clamping, is that injection part. We extract the nucleus, and then they do the transcriptomics. And so we can try to compare like how does what I'm seeing from the electrophysiological side compare with the genetic side, and where does it overlap or intersect. So because you have two sides of it, you can kind of compare like possibly like how accurate are we being, right? If she can see the same kinds of, if she can see like a difference between inhibitory and excitatory neurons, like can I also like get a very similar matching from the electrophysiological side? And then can we like compare that well to like brain slices from the actual human brain?
What is the collaboration like with the rest of the lab, Inushi? Like, do you spend a lot of time meeting or talking with each other or looking at each other's screens and crossing over, or is it individualized?
No, it's very collaborative, right? Like as Cade was saying, like we more do the bioinformatics sides, right? So we need people for patch clamping, we need people for the transcriptomics. So there's a lot of wet lab that goes into what we do. So they do like, the preliminary kind of stuff that gets us the data that we then analyze. So really we also need to be like asking them, like what's going on behind the scenes, for us to also understand the data that comes out. So yeah, so it's a very collaborative environment. There's a lot of back and forth going on. It's very nice.
And what's it like being mentored by Cedric?
Oh, it's great. Fantastic. Yeah. So Cedric's actually very easy to go to and talk to. Like whenever you're like, oh, I'm not really sure like what's happening with the data or how I should present certain things. Like there's all this information, right? How do we tell a story out of what we get, right? Because you can go down several rabbit holes, and Cedric's very good at kind of just bringing you back to reality and just like pulling you back and kind of saying, this is like what we need to do. Like, this is what we want to show, right? This is what we're exploring. So, yeah.
How's his approach been able to help you in moments where you might get frustrated or the progress is really slow? Is there a way that he handles things that you've been able to emulate?
Yeah. So I think I'm one of those people who are like very much like, if I find something interesting, I would just go down that rabbit hole constantly. And it's just like, I'll be like, oh, maybe this method isn't right. Maybe this method isn't right. And I'm always kind of doubting myself. But Cedric's very good at just like, pick one, like it's fine. And we'll see how that works out. It's very positive in that sense.
And have you noticed that you are more conditioned now to be able to do that, to have a single focus and not let your mind race to every possible possibility?
I think so. Like it's obviously like taken some time. Like I've spent like 5 years with Cedric, right? So it's now come to me like continuously like reminding myself that it's, like there's so much to explore and there's so many ways to do things, especially when it comes to bioinformatics. Right. But ultimately you also kind of have to trust your judgment too. So yeah, it's quite helped. Like, yeah.
How does the bioinformatics compare to what you were doing in the Air Force? Can't possibly be quite as exciting, I would have thought. I may be wrong.
It's quite a bit different. The similarity would be that in Intel is your goal is to tell a story. It's just obviously very different from the story you're trying to tell as a scientist. In Intel, the story is like, who is this person you're going after? Why are they important? who are they connected to? What would be the impact if we grabbed them versus other options?
Wow, so it's just like the movies, huh?
But yes, but so it's like you can also get carried away and think that the story is much bigger. Like there's all like in the movies where they say that like this person's plotting the next 9/11 attack. The odds are that's not what's happening. Like a lot of times, like your own head can get to it.
And so you can have tunnel vision and lock on to what you think's happening, and it might not be.
Yeah, or what you wish to happen, right? Because the story is infinitely more interesting if you get to stop the next 9/11. It may not be the case. Yeah, again, and most likely it's not. Or again, in the case of like an American hostage, it's like, you know, if you're wrong, then you could cost that person their life, and you may not find them. But the same thing with in science is that if you have a hypothesis, like it's your pet project, it's like it's what you want to be true, and so you have to like kind of ground yourself in what would actually disprove what I'm looking at, and be more curious. And so I guess like that was the mind, like that's not a typical mindset of like how an intelligence analyst brought it, but since I had a science background before, it helped me in Intel, and then obviously I just brought it back into science as well.
That's a very interesting analogy. Do you miss the adrenaline part of doing that job?
Yeah, I was actually thinking about it just because I knew we were going to be talking, is that I did like the more immediate effects, right?
Yeah, you couldn't have gone further away on the spectrum, could you? From like immediacy to 10 years later, we get to publish.
Yeah,
something.
yeah. So like you're obviously doing more, I'd say like life-giving work, I guess. Like if you're trying to like cure GBM, then you're like hoping to save lives, and in the same respect, you're trying to do that in the military to protect your own. But it's definitely the completely different flip side to the equation. So like I do miss the immediacy of it.
Yeah,
because
one's on the day and one's years into the future, and you're not necessarily right there when it's,
or you don't find out if you're wrong very quickly.
yeah, but perhaps not as drastically as well. And why did you come to SAHMRI in the first place, Inushi?
It was because of Cedric. So when I was looking to do honors, I knew I wanted to do neuroscience, and I was looking at honors projects, and one project was actually dealing with animal work, which I wasn't very confident in, and the other one was actually Cedric. And so he was actually the first and only lab head that I talked to. And I came in once and then talked to him. I was like, I'm interested in doing neuroscience. At that point, I didn't know he was doing GBM research. So it was like Parkinson's and I think childhood dementia as well. So yeah, and he was very welcoming and wanted to have me on board. And he suggested start volunteering. And I had a bit of a break between finishing undergrad and honors. So yeah, I started volunteering with him for a bit. And then eventually, I kind of fell into GBM research, which I actually really loved.
And why neuroscience?
Neuroscience, I'm not sure. It was just a thought that popped in because as you know, I said I was thinking of medicine. And if I did do medicine, I was going to go into like neurology or psychiatry. And then I was like, cool, that takes a long time. What about psychology? Right. And again, I didn't know that there was a completely different field in research as well. And yeah, I'm very lucky that, you know, eventually like things just happened the way it happened and I met Cedric and yeah, I fell into research.
What is it about the brain though? Like all those other alternatives you mentioned were all brain related.
Yeah.
So how come the brain and not something else?
I think I was still very interested in the cognition side of things, like why people do what they do, like what's like how the connections are actually, you know, driving people's personalities, their, you know, behaviors, and what's the reason for some people to, you know, like we're all very different. So what's the reason behind that, right? So yeah, so I think I was more interested on getting to the nitty gritty, like really like cell basis kind of thing. And, you know, me being like 16, very naive, my thought was, oh, I could probably do that through medicine. But I think research is much more good at that.
And what did you discover through your PhD?
So my PhD, so I know I said I was interested in like looking into the nitty gritty behind cognition and everything. didn't do that, but I actually did something much more exciting, I think. And so my PhD was focused on glioblastoma. And as we all know, glioblastoma, grade 4 brain cancer, and it's got very poor survival. So, and one of the reasons is because it's really hard to target, right? There's multiple different types of cells within a tumor, right? And they can all shift towards like becoming, like if you apply a drug, it can shape shift into a different type of cell. And so what we kind of wanted to know is, okay, like GBM, it's found in the brain, it's very hard to target. What are the factors that are driving really this shape shift, right? We know drugs can do it, but what about the brain microenvironment? There's a lot of interest in it already, and people have looked at immune cells, they've looked at neurons, but one of the main things we focused during my PhD was cerebrospinal fluid. So cerebrospinal fluid is like very unique. It's a fluid in the brain, right? It's very different to blood. It doesn't have the same proteins as blood. But yeah, it's very important for the brain, removing waste, providing nutrients and everything. And these tumors are going to be exposed to them. So that was the main focus of my PhD. And we looked into how, CSF is going to really affect these tumors. And we got in patient tumors from our collaborators at Flinders and the RA, and we grew cell lines out of these. So they're kind of little avatars, like in vitro avatars of the patients. And we exposed them to also human CSF, which we also got from donors. And what we saw is that, like these tumors do change when they're exposed to CSF compared to what we're growing them in naturally, like normally in the lab. And they become more resistant to treatment, right? And so we were like, okay, this is something, right? Like we don't know that this was happening before. And then what we then looked at, okay, that's where my transcriptomics really came in as well. I did a little bit of this during my honors, but this is where I like got pushed into doing the transcriptomics, like thrown in, like, right. And we were looking at, okay, what are the genes that are upregulated in these cells? Like what's really driving this change, right? And so we found one gene, and which was called NUPR1. And we're like, okay, now how do we target this? So NUPR1 is actually not really unique to GBM, but it's also found in other like aggressive cancers, like pancreatic cancers and things. And they're also of the more resistant or recurrent cancers. And we found that this antipsychotic can actually treat it, which is like a very old antipsychotic, and people are now starting to explore it too. So yeah, that was one of the main things that we were looking at.
Wow, so you got the whole downstream effect from figuring out that the spinal fluid was a major part of it to then getting into the transcriptomics and going through the whole thing. So
yeah,
that's cool to get the experience. And I guess you're picking up all these skills along the way that you didn't know you needed.
Yeah. It's been very good in that, like, I got exposure to, culturing, like the wet lab experience. And then I was also like getting to do the bioinformatics. So I kind of really understood like the science behind it, and also then bringing it out into the office and with the genetics too.
Good work.
Yeah, thank you.
Cade, how do you deal with the instability of being an early career researcher? Do you find it daunting?
I would say not necessarily, because I don't intend to like apply for funding.
Okay.
Per se, like I think from this experience, I would go to like industry. So yeah, the funding side or the career within academia, I think will be short lived.
Okay.
So it's not that daunting for me.
Go somewhere more secure. Is that something that you think about, Inushi?
Yeah, I think so. Like we've been applying for grants and things, and it's a long process. Yeah, but I still enjoy the writing, and it's very interesting coming up with different projects, right? Like, so we already have this really cool, like finding how do we now expand this? How do we get it to patients, that to see if it's really like something exciting. That can help patients too.
Because we do hear a topic of conversation that's fairly regular for early and mid-career researchers, and the valley of death, and being really worried about securing the future of your career, and that being valid because you only get a year or 2 or 3 at a time. From your colleagues and fellow students, do you hear about a lot of that? or how do you think lots of people are managing that stress?
Yeah, I think there's a lot of nervousness around, like, as soon as you finish your PhD, like, the clock starts ticking to secure fellowships and everything. But yeah, no, like, I think it's one of those things that you just have to keep doing what you're doing, put your head down, like, just keep doing the work, and eventually, I think it'll come. I'm just trying to stay positive.
Yep. And does Cedric help with that?
Yeah, he does. Like, he's always encouraging us to, apply for any fellowship that we can, come up with projects and all of that kind of stuff. So yeah, pretty good.
I've been seeing you guys at the gym most mornings for this year anyway.
Yeah.
What's kicked that off?
I guess I've always gone to the gym, and when I went home for the States, I think Inushi got a gym membership, so just worked out. We go to the same gym.
Yeah, I think I do stuff in like spontaneous bursts, and I was like, I'll just sign up for like a whole annual membership. I don't know. I was running before that. Like, I used to run around my house. So, and then I was like, kind of started to get.
And then you got a free personal trainer. That was good.
Yeah, exactly. Very convenient, right?
And how are the gains going?
I think you can see some.
What's your assessment, Cade, of Inushi's progress?
Yeah, it's this, what do you call it, beginner gains, like getting a little cocky.
The noob gains.
Yeah. You got to enjoy them while they last.
Am I going to lose them?
No, they're just not going to be as quick. Like, you're going to make like massive gains. Like, you're going to get 10 pounds of muscle. Sorry, I'm going to use pounds. And then for your first year, and then it'll be 5 the next. And then you'll be lucky if you get like a pound a year.
With that attitude.
Yeah.
Okay.
With
So
my attitude.
you got to enjoy it while it lasts.
Yeah. I feel like winter's like one of those really hard times to just get yourself up in the morning.
Yeah. Are you bulking now?
No. I can't keep off the Macca's.
Oh, that's okay. That's good. That's good for bulking. Is there anything about your gym training that mirrors your research work?
I did a decent amount of research of like, what would optimize it. And I had another friend that was way more meticulous, and I just kind of copied him. And so like I go through phases where I'm much more into it, and then other times where it's just clocking in and clocking out. Just keeps your mind right.
That's a winter.
Are you using that as an excuse now?
Yeah.
Okay.
100%.
And winter goes for a fairly long time too.
Yeah.
It is hard though when it's cold and dark.
Yeah. I feel like when you have two people, like, you always rely on the other person to just like keep you in check. I think it's not working.
What other hobbies have you got?
My other hobbies, I do like reading. I had this phase. I think, again, I go through phases, right? I had a phase of running. I had a phase of trying to teach myself guitar. I kind of tapered off. But yeah, and then I had a phase of, I want to draw. But yeah, it's just,
Okay.
whatever I feel like in the moment. Really.
Okay, you're a woman of many hobbies. Did you master any guitar riffs?
Yeah, I've played piano. Like, I grew up playing piano, so
Not guitar.
I can play a little bit. I can play a little bit. Like, not great.
Smoke on the water?
No, what's that?
Okay. Do you go through phases, Cade? Are you fairly consistent?
Because I like adrenaline activities. So like, I'll get into snowboarding, or I'll get into like surfing, but I usually pick up those hobbies. And then when I reach the point where to up the ante, I need to like break a bone or risk break a bone, then I switch. So
Okay, well that's a great time to switch. You pull out right at the right time.
Yeah, I go snowboarding to surfing, or like mountaineering and that kind of thing.
That's great, and just escape unscathed.
Exactly, yeah. Injuries aren't fun.
How are you getting the adrenaline spike at the moment?
Oh, no offense to Adelaide, there's not as much of that.
You have to go elsewhere.
Yeah, I like to read, and I wish there was like a beach with waves, but I have to wait.
Yeah, you got to drive a bit to find one of those. Go to Port Lincoln. What excites you about your field for the future?
My field? I think there's a lot of research coming up with now, I think, the intersection between cancer and neuroscience, how the neurons talk to the cancer cells and how all of that kind of play a role in making these cancer very aggressive, right? So yeah, I think that, and like, I'll be very excited to see also where the research that we have done also goes. Potentially, like, this antipsychotic that we found could hopefully be very beneficial to patients as well, especially in targeting these cells that become really aggressive. It may not be like a huge therapy that you use by itself, but potentially helping with the standard of care that exists. Yeah.
Yeah, it's great to be part of something that's so translational in its potential impact.
Mm-hmm.
And where do you want to take things, do you think, Cade?
Not sure at the moment. Like, you mean like after working here, or?
Yeah, take your bioinformatics skills.
Yeah, I would think like working for like a company like Neuralink would be interesting, or like something does on the computational biology or neurobiology side. I think there's a few of those out there in California. I'd love to be back in California. I've kind of lived all over the country, so it'd be nice to be closer to family.
How long have you been away from home for now?
So I mean, since I graduated college, I've only been home for like a couple weeks a year. So 6 years. 6 years since I've like lived in California.
So do they miss you there?
Oh yeah. I'm close to my family, so I'm looking forward to getting back. But I just got to get the right opportunities lined up.
Well, we're glad to have you here while we've got you anyway. Thanks, guys. Very interesting stories. And I wanted to get you both on together because I know you're friends and you cross over with your work as well. So I thought that made sense, and it was interesting to have you both on. So thank you.
Yeah, thank you.
Thank you.
If you want to learn more about SAHMRI and the researchers working to build a brighter, healthier future for you and your family, head to samhri.org.au.